Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today something really different. We are going to use a quilt block pattern to accentuate our art journal page, and we're going to use napkins and gel prints to do it. So I'm working on my 9 by 12 Canson Mixed Media art journal page, and this one is not gessoed. I've taped off the top as I usually do, and I've taken it off the coil so I can work with it flat. So here is the quilt block pattern that I am going to use. It's called Pogo Stick if you want to do a search on Pinterest. Now I want for the background an all over napkin. So here are some from NinnysNapkins.com, and there's a link and coupon code in the description box below. This one's called Daisy's Blue. It would work. This one is called Limoni. Love the soft colors there. This one with the all over pattern is La Lavandie. Fresh Fruits. Happy Gardener. Think fabric when you're picking a napkin. And this one that we end up using is called Poppy Meadow. I love the colors of this Poppy Meadow. The purple, the yellow, the red, orange of the poppies really drew my eye, but the small scale of them on an all over pattern is something that I challenge myself. So I wanted to come up with a way of using that, and putting quilt blocks and using your gel prints I think is just going to be the ticket. So before we glue this down, we need to take off the 2 excess plies of napkin, and I just use a piece of painter's tape. You can put some Mod Podge on your finger and get those 2 plies off. Now as you can see, my page is 12 by 9 and this napkin is over 12 inches wide, so it's perfect fit for it. And you see those bright colors. Now before we glue that down, I wanted to add a little bit more interest. When I glue it down, it's going to go translucent, so anything I stamp now is going to peek through. Now my first instinct was to just do some script, and then I thought, oh, I have this postal from stamp set from Bo Bunny. I wanted to use it. So I'll be using several elements of it and stamping on it. Now I could have glued the napkin down and stamped later, and that might have helped a little bit. Then I have this tiny dragonfly from this Flying Dragonflies from Crafter's Companion, and I'll put a link in the Amazon store. Speaking of which, my Amazon store, while it is US, those links will take you to your Amazon store if you are in the UK, Canada, Germany, France, and I believe Spain. So click on them and they will take you to your store, but they will still work. And then I'm putting the script stamp, and I'm stamping with black archival paint. Now if you have small scale stencils, you could stencil that on too. I'm giving this a quick dry because I'm going to be putting fluid matte medium to glue my napkin down. And I'm going to apply the fluid matte medium to about half the napkin, and then flip the napkin over and then put the fluid matte medium on top. Now I did get wrinkles, and I don't have a problem with that. I'm not an expert decoupage And I like the texture that the extra napkins get. So I'm going to put the sheet there so it doesn't get stuck, and flip it over and get that second half of the napkin down. And once this is on here, I'm going to want to let this really dry. You can use a heat tool if you wish, but you really want it to dry. When you have multiple layers on there, take the time to dry it. Now you can see the details. Now some of those stamps were a little too visible, so what I'm doing here is grabbing some white gesso and just knocking them back, just so they're not so front and center. It got a little too busy. So had I waited and glued the napkin down first and then stamped, I might have prevented that. Live and learn. But here's the workaround. And in the end, you don't even see that this was a problem. It's just more detail and interest to your napkin. I love the wavy postal mark, and I love the introduction of the dragonfly. So this piece I can use for something else, and actually, spoiler alert, we're going to use it on this page. If you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button and click on the bell and select the option to be notified of upcoming videos. That way you won't miss anything. And if you are a subscriber, thank you so much. If you have crafty friends, share my channel with them. So let's get back to the next step. We're going to make the quilt pattern, and this is a gel print, and it's yellow oxide. It's fairly plain, and I am trying to decide here what color I want to do this part of my design on. And since I'm visual, I'm trying it out. So if you used a different napkin, you're going to look at the colors that are in the background, and you can see those cone flowers are yellow, and it really goes. And I'm also experimenting and testing out how thick I want these strips. So that's my yellow oxide version. But then I thought, you know what? I have this dioxazine, it's a blue purple, and it matches the flowers that are on here as well. And it had some gold on it, which matches the cone flowers. Now, if you don't have a gel print that matches, you can paint a piece of copy paper or mixed media paper, do some stamping on it, even grab out your gel plate and make one. Add the perfect combination of colors that go with the napkin. And those napkins that I showed earlier, I definitely will be doing a similar quilt block type treatment with them, as I really enjoyed this process and the end effect. So now I'm ready to glue them down. So I'm just doing some markings. I'm marking the midpoint. So it's 12 inches across. So I'm marking the 6-point inch, 9 down, so 4.5. And I'm just giving myself a little bit of guidelines for it. Now my strips I cut, they're 1-inch strips. But you can play around and do thinner or thicker, depending on the size of your art journal page and your own personal preference. And roughly I'm making a 6x6 square in the middle of this art journal page. Now, because this is geometric, I want to get this fairly close, the top and bottom line going up and down and the side to side one. So I'm roughly getting about 1.5 inches from the square to the top and 1.5 inches down and 6 inches across on the outside edge. Now, those side ones and the top one, I have my guideline and I'm folding it in half to put on that guideline. And then I'm putting it a little bit under what will be the square. I'll glue that down like that. So now that I have my overall placement, I'm going to grab some fluid matte medium. Gel medium I actually probably would have worked better here. I just find the fluid matte medium soaks into the napkin and into the copy paper that the gel print is on, and it just takes a little time to get tacky and stick. So I'm pushing it down, but it worked. So here again, I'm folding it in half and putting it on my guideline and tucking it under. If this way works for you, great. If you've got a better way, go with what you know. And I'm gluing the sides down. I did the top, the vertical line, and now I'm gluing the 6x6 square on there. It gets a little wonky, but you know what? Go with the flow. I'm absolutely loving the contrast this gel print gives to what the colors are in the background. It really just brought everything to life. So then I'm going to make sure that everything here gets really dry before I move on to the next step. I'm going to cut off the excess. Now you may have noticed in the initial pogo stick quilt block that vertical line went through that center piece. I absolutely forgot. Didn't realize it till I was editing the video. I think it would have looked great, especially when I get to the focal image point. But again, you can play with it. Here I'm just adding a little 1 inch by 1 inch square to the corners. I'm just adding some detailing in here and just gluing those down. So you can, again, start with the quilt block pattern and tweak it to fit your composition. Remember, this isn't a quilt block. And since this is really the first time I've done this, I was figuring it out as I went. So now I'm playing with focal images and sentiments. I'm unsure. I've got this poppy stamp from Stampendous. I have this napkin that's called Arwea. You could also use free printables, as I showed you there. I decided that I'm going to use this. Oh, I think it's called Proud Poppy. Sorry, Proud Poppy. And I just did an Easter card using this same napkin, which is why it's still sitting on my desk. But that's what's so great about napkins. You have so many images that you can use it on a multitude of projects. So I'm grabbing some sentiments out of my Through the Garden Gate sentiment pack, and I'm still unsure what I want to do, but I know I'm going to use some of these poppies on my page. I'm peeling off the excess ply and gluing them onto copy paper so that whatever's in the background doesn't come through. I'm not sure how many of these elements I'm going to use at this time, but I'm gluing them all down now, and then I have options, and whatever I don't use will get stored away, ready to go next time. There's lots of poppy napkins on Ninny's Napkins site, and you can definitely match. Some are more red, some are more orange. Now I wanted the gel print here to really stand out. So I am shading by using my Stabilo All pencil, and I'm putting a line there, and then I'm activating it with my angle brush. This is giving shading around the gel print. Now with the Stabilo All pencil, you need to remember that it is water activated. So if I'm going to add any wet medium later, that is going to reactivate and it might smudge. So you need to act differently if you use it. I could have used my Inktense blocks and avoided the whole thing. Now I wanted it a little darker, so I grabbed my black Posca pen and I'm adding a black line all around the gel prints. All sides, in the little corners, everything. And I really like how that darkens it up. I could have done faux stitching with the black, so it looked like quilting. And then I'm doing a sketchy line around the outside. And the reason it's sketchy, remember that napkin, there's a lot of texture there. So you're not going to get a smooth line. So I'm not even attempting it. Here I'm just making another little sketchy line on the inside. Love how that looks. Then I go back and add another sketchy line on around it because I liked how it turned out. So I grabbed a sentiment, I just took the word believe and I bubble cut around it, and now I'm gluing down the poppies and those leaves of the poppies, and I'm putting the gel medium on the back of the focal image, not on the page. Remember, we used our Stabilo All pencil. If I put it on the background, it would reactivate and I get a black smudge over everything. So I'm being very careful. And I'm using gel medium because we have the napkin and the copy paper and the thickness is a little more. So now I'm coming in with my angle brush and some black acrylic paint, and I'm shading, adding some definition to this poppy, making it stand out a little bit more from the busy background of the first napkin. So if you're looking for quilt block patterns, just do a search on Pinterest. Find some geometric quilt block patterns, dig out your napkins and or gel prints and combine them. I'm looking forward to spending some time on my iPad looking for other block patterns that I can use on my art journal and mixed media pieces. I wanted to introduce some of that yellow into more of the background, so I'm splattering with some gold. Having the all over splatter unifies your thing. Now we have these yellow cone flowers, but I noticed in one of the quadrants, in that lower left hand one, there was no yellow there. And remember that piece of napkin that we had left over? Well, I'm harvesting out the yellow cone flowers, cutting roughly around them, and then I'm going to glue them down wherever I want them, and that way I'm adding color to my background and no one's the wiser. And I can do this very easily because this napkin is on a white background. I just wanted a little bit more yellow on there. So if I had had that vertical stripe all the way through that center block, I would have just used the one larger poppy right in the center and it would have been on that purple blue. So here I am just gluing all those elements down with just the fluid matte medium. the whites of the napkin go translucent, and you can't even tell that we've added to the napkin background. Then I decided I'm going to do that same thing with the purple flower that's there, just to add a little bit more color to that background. So I'm looking at where there are some blank spaces. This is a winning color combination, and it's a color scheme that I'm going to use on a different page. That yellow, the orange red, and the dioxazine purple, wow, they just shine together. So there we have the finished page. Thank you so much for joining me. Give me a thumbs up, ask me a question. Are you going to use quilt block patterns on your art journal pages? I hope so. This one was a lot of fun.